What happens when America's favorite action hero completely loses it on daytime television? It only took 29 seconds for Chris Pratt to go from charming guest to explosive confrontation in what might be the most shocking moment The View has ever witnessed. Before we dive into this absolute chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Last night's episode of The View was supposed to be a lighthearted conversation about Chris Pratt's new action movie. Instead, it turned into an absolute disaster that had co-hosts scrambling and producers panicking. What started as friendly daytime banter between Pratt and Sara Haines quickly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable confrontations in The View's history. The morning began with all the energy and excitement that The View is known for. The iconic table was set, the audience was buzzing with anticipation, and Chris Pratt walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. He was dressed casually in jeans and a Henley shirt, his signature smile lighting up the studio. The co-host stood to greet him. Hugs were exchanged all around, and he settled into the guest chair looking completely relaxed and ready for what he thought would be a fun conversation. "Chris Pratt, welcome back to The View," Whoopi Goldberg said with a warm smile, adjusting her glasses. "It's so good to have you here. How have you been? You look great." "I've been great, Whoopi," Pratt replied, his voice cheerful and energetic, his trademark enthusiasm on full display. "It's always a pleasure to be here with you ladies. I love this show, I love the energy, I love the conversations you have. It's an honor to be back. Honestly, I was excited all week knowing I was coming on." The audience clapped enthusiastically, some people whistling their approval. Sara Haines leaned forward with a bright smile, her hands clasped together on the table. "We're so excited to have you here. You've got a new movie coming out, and from what we've heard, it's absolutely incredible. The early buzz has been amazing. Tell us about it." Pratt's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm, his eyes sparkling. "Oh man, I'm so proud of this one. It's an action thriller, but it's got real emotional depth, you know? It's not just explosions and car chases, though we've got plenty of those too." He laughed. "I play a former special ops soldier trying to reconnect with his daughter while dealing with some dangerous people from his past. It's got heart, it's got action, it's got everything I love about filmmaking. We shot it over 6 months in 3 different countries, and it was just an incredible experience." "That sounds amazing," Joy Behar chimed in, nodding appreciatively. "You've become such a huge action star. From Parks and Recreation, where you played lovable Andy Dwyer, to the Guardians of the Galaxy, to Jurassic World. That's quite a journey. How do you even process that transformation?" "It's been wild," Pratt nodded, laughing and shaking his head. "I still can't believe it sometimes. I mean, I literally went from playing a goofy guy who lived in a pit in a sitcom to fighting dinosaurs and saving the galaxy. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, is this real life? It's been the ride of a lifetime, and I'm grateful every single day. I don't take any of it for granted." Sunny Hostin smiled warmly. "Your fans absolutely love you. You've got this likability factor that's just off the charts. What do you think makes you so relatable to audiences?" Pratt thought for a moment, his expression sincere. "I think it's because I'm just a regular guy, you know? I came from a small town. I worked regular jobs before I made it in Hollywood. I pumped gas. I waited tables. I lived in a van for a while. I never forgot where I came from, and I think people can sense that authenticity. I'm not trying to be anyone I'm not." The conversation flowed naturally for the next several minutes. They discussed his intense training regimen for the movie, which included learning actual military tactics and working with real Special Forces veterans. Pratt talked about the stunts he performed himself, including a harrowing helicopter sequence that had him genuinely terrified. He shared stories about the bond he formed with his young co-star, who played his daughter, how she reminded him of his own son, and made the emotional scenes feel incredibly real. Pratt was animated and funny, telling stories about things going wrong on set, like the time a prop gun malfunctioned and covered him in fake blood for hours, or when he accidentally broke a very expensive camera during a fight scene. The co-hosts and audience were laughing, completely engaged. Everything seemed perfect for a typical View appearance. The energy was light, the conversation was flowing, and Pratt seemed completely at ease. "So Chris," Sara Haines said, her tone shifting slightly, becoming more measured and serious. The smile remained on her face, but something changed in her eyes. "I want to ask you about something that's been getting a lot of attention online. There's been some discussion about your faith, about your church, and about some of the positions that church holds on certain issues. It's something a lot of people have questions about." Pratt's smile faltered just a bit. He shifted in his seat, his body language becoming less open, his shoulders tensing slightly. "Okay, sure. What about it?" "Well, there are people who have raised concerns," Haines continued, her voice careful but pointed, each word measured. "Concerns about the church you attend and some of its teachings, particularly regarding LGBTQ issues. There have been articles written, social media discussions. Can you talk about that? Can you address those concerns?" The atmosphere in the studio changed immediately. You could feel the tension, rising like a tide. The audience, which had been warm and engaged, went quiet. Pratt cleared his throat, his hand going to the back of his neck in a gesture that suggested discomfort. "I mean, I attend a church, yes. But I don't speak for the church, and the church doesn't speak for me. My faith is personal. It's between me and God. It's not something I generally talk about publicly because it's sacred to me. But you're promoting this church by attending it." Haines pressed, leaning forward, her elbows on the table. "And when that church has positions that many people find harmful or discriminatory, doesn't that reflect on you? Doesn't that make you complicit in some way? Don't you bear some responsibility for the message that sends?" Pratt's jaw tightened visibly. You could see his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. "Complicit? Sarah, I go to church because I believe in something bigger than myself. I go because it gives me peace and helps me be a better person, a better father, a better husband. That doesn't mean I agree with every single thing that's ever been said by anyone associated with that institution. Churches are made up of people, and people are flawed. But silence can be interpreted as agreement," Haines countered, her voice firm. "When you don't speak out against teachings that hurt people, when you continue to support an organization that many see as discriminatory, actively discriminatory, against LGBTQ individuals, what message does that send to your fans? Especially to young LGBTQ fans who look up to you? What message?" Pratt's voice took on an edge, his calm demeanor starting to crack. "It sends the message that I'm a complex human being with nuanced beliefs. It sends the message that my relationship with faith is personal and complicated, like most people's relationships with faith. It sends the message that I don't have to justify every aspect of my spiritual life to satisfy the internet or anyone else. I'm allowed to have a private spiritual life." Sunny Hostin jumped in, her voice measured but firm. "But Chris, you have to understand that for many people, especially in the LGBTQ community, this isn't just an abstract issue. This isn't just theology or philosophy. These are real lives being affected. Real people who feel hurt by the teachings of certain churches. Real people who feel excluded, marginalized, told they're wrong for existing as who they are." "I understand that," Pratt said, his voice tense, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair tighter. "I absolutely understand that, and I would never want to hurt anyone. That's the last thing I would ever want. But I also don't think it's fair to paint me with a broad brush because of where I go to church. I have friends from all walks of life. I have LGBTQ friends that I love and support. I believe in equality. I believe in love and acceptance for all people. Then why not attend a church that aligns with those values?" Haines asked, her tone challenging, almost accusatory. "Why continue to support an institution that doesn't fully embrace everyone? that actively teaches against LGBTQ relationships. There are plenty of affirming churches out there. Why not go to one of those? Pratt ran his hand through his hair, clearly frustrated, his face flushing. Because faith isn't that simple, Sarah. It's not like choosing a restaurant where you just pick the one with the menu you like best. It's deeply personal. It's about community, about history, about connection. And honestly, I resent being put in this position where I have to defend my spiritual choices on national television. This feels like an invasion of privacy. Nobody's attacking your spirituality, Haines said, though her tone suggested otherwise, with an edge of something that felt like judgment. We're asking about the impact of your choices, about accountability, about recognizing that your actions have consequences, especially when you have such a huge platform, when millions of people follow you and look up to you. My actions? Pratt's voice was rising now, his calm completely shattered. Going to church is my action? Praying is something I need to be held accountable for? Seeking spiritual guidance and community is something that requires your approval? That's what we're doing here? The tension was palpable now, thick enough to cut with a knife. The other co-hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances, uncertain whether to intervene or let this play out. The audience was silent, watching the confrontation unfold with growing discomfort. Some people were shifting in their seats, others had their hands over their mouths in shock. We're talking about the institutions you support, Haines clarified, but her voice was firm, unyielding, almost prosecutorial. And whether you've thought about the message that sends to people who are already marginalized and hurting, whether you've considered the impact of lending your celebrity, your image, your name to an organization that teaches harmful things. Of course I've thought about it, Pratt said, his frustration evident in every word, in the way his hands were gesturing wildly now. Do you think I don't think about this? Do you think I just go through life not caring about people? I think about it all the time. It keeps me up at night sometimes. But I also think I have the right to practice my faith without being interrogated about it on television, without being made to feel like a criminal for believing in God. You have that right, Haines agreed, nodding slowly. But we also have the right to ask questions. That's what we do here on this show. We have conversations about difficult topics. We ask the hard questions that need to be asked. This isn't a conversation, Pratt shot back, his voice sharp now, cutting. A conversation is a two-way street, where both people are listening and trying to understand each other. This is an interrogation. This is a tribunal. This, you trying to get me to say something that fits your narrative, that gives you the soundbite you want. Haines's expression hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. That's not fair, Chris. We're not trying to trap you. We're trying to understand your position on something that matters to a lot of people, something that affects real lives. My position is that my faith is my business, Pratt said, his voice loud enough to echo slightly in the studio, bouncing off the walls. My position is that I don't owe anyone an explanation for my spiritual beliefs. My position is that this ambush is completely inappropriate. You brought me here under false pretenses. It's not an ambush, Haines insisted, but there was heat in her voice now too, matching his energy. You're a public figure who makes millions of dollars because of your fans, because people support you. Those fans deserve to know where you stand on important issues. They deserve to know if you're supporting institutions that hurt them. They know where I stand, Pratt countered, standing up from his chair now, his body language aggressive, defensive. I've been clear about supporting love and equality. I've never said anything hateful. I've never discriminated against anyone. What more do you want from me? Do you want me to denounce my church on television? Do you want me to perform my faith in the exact way you approve of? Do you want me to abandon something that's been a source of comfort and strength for me? Haines stood as well, her face flushed, her hands planted firmly on the table. I want you to recognize that your silence on these issues is hurtful. That's all. I want you to understand that your privilege allows you to be silent while others are suffering. While LGBTQ youth are being told they're sinners, that they're wrong, that they need to change who they are. My privilege? Pratt's eyes widened, his voice incredulous. You're going to talk to me about privilege? You're sitting here on national television making me justify my right to practice my faith, putting me on trial for believing in God, and you're talking about privilege? That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. The irony is just staggering. The studio was in chaos now. Producers were rushing around in the background, headsets crackling with urgent communications. The other co-hosts were trying to interject, trying to calm things down. But Pratt and Haines were locked in their confrontation. Neither willing to back down, both committed to their positions. Chris, you're twisting my words, Haines said, her voice shaking slightly, whether from anger or emotion. I'm not attacking your right to practice faith. I'm asking you to consider the impact of your choices, to think about the people who are hurt by the teachings of the institution you support. You are attacking it. Pratt's voice cracked with emotion. You've spent the last 10 minutes questioning my character, my beliefs, my choices. You've implied that I'm a bad person because I go to church. You've suggested that I'm somehow responsible for pain and suffering because I believe in something. How is that not an attack? How is that anything other than religious persecution? Because we're having a discussion about accountability, Haines insisted, her voice rising to match his. About using your platform responsibly. About recognizing that your actions have meaning and impact beyond your personal comfort. There's that word again, Pratt said, laughing bitterly, the sound harsh and broken. Accountability. Responsibility. As if my job as an actor means I give up my right to privacy. As if being famous means I have to answer to you or anyone else about my personal relationship with God. As if I owe the world a detailed explanation of my spiritual journey. Whoopi tried to step in, her voice firm but attempting to be calming. Okay, let's all take a breath here and, no. Pratt cut her off, his voice sharp, uncharacteristically aggressive. No, I'm not taking a breath. I'm done. I came here to talk about my movie, to have a nice conversation, to share something I'm proud of with your audience. And instead, I got ambushed with questions about my faith and told I'm essentially a bad person for going to church. Told I'm hurting people by praying. Nobody said you're a bad person, Haines protested. But her voice lacked conviction now. You didn't have to say it. Pratt shot back, his eyes blazing. It's been implied in every question, every follow-up, every judgmental look, every tone of voice. I can feel it. Everyone watching can feel it. You've made your point crystal clear. You think I'm wrong. You think my faith is wrong. You think my choices are wrong. Sara Haines crossed her arms defensively. If you feel judged, maybe that's telling you something. Maybe that's your conscience speaking. Maybe that's your inner voice telling you something isn't right. Pratt's face went red, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Are you serious right now? You're going to psychoanalyze me on top of everything else? You're going to tell me what my conscience is saying? This is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. The arrogance of that statement is just breathtaking. Chris, please sit down, Whoopi said, her voice more commanding now, trying to reassert control over the situation. Let's talk this through like adults. Let's take a moment and reset this conversation. There's nothing to talk through, Pratt said, reaching for his microphone pack with shaking hands. This interview is over. I'm not going to sit here and be judged for my faith. I'm not going to be made to feel like a bad person because I believe in something. Because I find comfort in prayer and community. You're being oversensitive, Haines said. And that was apparently the last straw, the final nail in the coffin. Oversensitive? Pratt's voice was dangerously quiet now. A whisper that somehow carried through the entire studio. You attack my faith, you question my character, you imply I'm hurting people by simply existing in my beliefs, you put me on trial on national television, and I'm oversensitive? That's rich, Sara. That's really rich. That's gaslighting at its finest. I didn't attack your faith, Haines insisted, but her voice was less certain now, wavering. Yes, you did, Pratt said firmly, his voice steady despite his obvious anger. You absolutely did. And you know what? I'm done defending myself to you. I'm done justifying my existence to people who've already made up their minds about me. I came here in good faith, no pun intended, and you used it as an opportunity to put me on trial, to make me a villain. He pulled off his microphone pack and set it on the chair with deliberate force. The audience was completely silent, shocked by what was unfolding before their eyes. Some people had their hands over their mouths, others were filming on their phones, knowing they were witnessing something historic. Chris, don't leave, Joy Behar said, her voice concerned. Let's talk about this. Let's work through this. There's nothing left to talk about, Pratt said, his voice tired now, defeated almost, the fight draining out of him. You've made it clear what you think of me and my choices. I get it. I understand. But I don't have to sit here and take it. I don't have to subject myself to this. So you're just going to run away? Haines challenged, her voice sharp again. You're going to walk off rather than have a difficult conversation? Rather than defend your position? Pratt stopped and turned back to face her, his eyes blazing with renewed fury. I'm not running away. I'm choosing not to be disrespected anymore. There's a difference. You want to have a conversation? Have a conversation. Don't set up an ambush and then act surprised when your guest doesn't want to play along with your agenda. It wasn't an ambush, Haines repeated. But she sounded less convinced now, her voice faltering. It absolutely was, Pratt said, his voice cutting through the studio. And everyone watching knows it. You brought me here under false pretenses. You said we'd talk about my movie, about my career, about the work I'm proud of, and instead you wanted to grill me about my faith. You wanted to make me apologize for believing in God. That's the definition of an ambush. That's dishonest, and it's wrong. Sunny Hostin spoke up, her voice gentle. Chris, I think maybe there's been a misunderstanding here. We didn't mean to make you feel attacked. We just wanted to understand. But you did, Pratt said simply, his voice quiet but firm. Intention doesn't matter when the impact is hurtful. Isn't that what you're always saying on this show? Well, it works both ways. You hurt me. You disrespected my beliefs. You made me feel small for believing in something bigger than myself. And now I'm leaving. Sara. Haines's face was flushed red, her composure cracking. I think you're being unfair. We were just asking questions that people have. Questions that your fans have been asking for months. People? Pratt questioned, his voice sharp. Or you? Because it felt pretty personal, Sara. It felt like you had an agenda coming in, and you weren't going to let anything get in the way of it. It felt like you decided before I even walked through that door what kind of person I was. That's not true, Haines said. But her voice wavered, uncertain. Isn't it? Pratt challenged, taking a step closer to the table. Be honest. Did you plan these questions before I got here? Did you decide you were going to confront me about my church, regardless of what the interview was supposed to be about? Did you discuss this with producers? The silence from Haines was telling, deafening. The other co-hosts looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, avoiding eye contact. The audience watched with rapt attention. That's what I thought, Pratt said quietly, his voice filled with disappointment. You had your mind made up before I even walked through that door, and that's fine. That's your right. But I also have the right to not participate in my own character assassination. I have the right to walk away when I'm being treated unfairly. Nobody's assassinating your character, Whoopi said gently, trying to mediate. Respectfully, Whoopi. That's exactly what happened here, Pratt said, his voice softer now, but still firm. I was brought on to promote my movie, and instead got questioned about my worthiness as a human being because of where I worship. If that's not character assassination, I don't know what is. He took a deep breath. I have nothing but respect for this show and what you ladies do. But this was wrong, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. With that, Chris Pratt turned and walked off the view set. The cameras followed him as he disappeared through the test backstage doors, the sound of them closing echoing through the silent studio. The co-hosts sat frozen at the table, looking at each other with varying expressions of shock, discomfort, and uncertainty. The audience remained utterly silent, processing what they'd just witnessed. Sara Haines sat back down slowly, her face still flushed, her hands trembling slightly. Whoopi looked at the camera, seemed about to say something, then shook her head. Joy Behar stared at the empty chair where Pratt had been sitting. A producer rushed onto the set, whispering urgently to Whoopi. She nodded, composed herself, and turned to face the camera. "We need to take a break," she said, her voice tight. "We'll be right back." The screen cut to commercial, but not before capturing one final shot of the empty guest chair and the discarded microphone pack, silent witnesses to one of the most explosive confrontations in The View's long history. The Hot Topics table, usually a place of spirited but controlled debate, had become the site of something much more raw and uncomfortable. What was supposed to be a fun promotional appearance had turned into a referendum on faith, privacy, and the boundaries of celebrity interrogation. Chris Pratt was gone, having walked off the set after refusing to continue what he saw as an attack on his beliefs. The interview was over. The damage was done, and The View would never quite be the same.